we've got 4 board members, so I think we'll get started. It's 6:01. Welcome, everyone. Small group tonight. Terry.
Great. Tonight we've got a well-deserved, fairly light agenda this evening. Our goal always, our purpose of coming together is to ensure that we've got can exchange information and build trust and teamwork as we strive to have efficiency at the board table. So this evening, Russ is back. We're going to talk a little bit about the activities fee increases that he's talked about and the board's had a chance to consider. We'll talk a little bit about the long-term facility, 10-year long-term facility maintenance plan, and we'll review our draft document of our priority work and goals for next year. We've got some policies to take a look at, and then we will move swiftly into opening up the meeting.
Okay. Next on our agenda is our board agenda monthly review. We had a retreat last week and reviewed a good share of that. The notes from the retreat, we still need to get those. I meant to mention that to you, Terry, about the notes from the retreat. And the one thing that we didn't accomplish on our yearly agenda goals is the school board evaluation, and I'll be sending that out on July 7th, and we'll have a week to complete that. So we'll move on then to operations with the Prior Lake activities.
Mind if I just sit
Sure.
right here?
Let me know when you want me to advance.
Okay. So I want to answer any questions because we've already gone through it once, but I think before we do, just to clarify, we're looking at 2 very different things. The first, I think, option that we need to consider, or that I'll look for board action for tonight, is the increased fee. So I think we should try to keep those 2 things separate. The increased fee is really, the request has been made to generate some more revenue to offset the costs. That's all it is. And over the next 3 years, it should offset the majority of our increases for transportation officials and for our invite fees and facility use fees like ice time at Dakota. The other piece to the request, or the second request that I would ask for board action on, if there's an appetite for it, would be to move to a student pass, which would, all that is really doing is providing us a consistent revenue stream for student admission. Right now, it's difficult to determine where kids are gonna go. And because basketball has been the hot ticket item, and we don't charge for basketball, no one was going to hockey last year, we lost some revenue because of it. I don't see that as a significant revenue gain from what we're typically doing, or what we've been doing. It will help across our middle school families, because right now we are only offering free admission to 9th through 12th graders. We've been charging K through 8th grade, and if they're pre-K, then we weren't charging, they're coming in with a parent. And then our senior citizens, 55 and above, we're getting in for that student rate of $5. And then anybody that would be on free or reduced lunch would get the pass for free, just like we give them the activity fee for free. Beth had mentioned a question regarding free and reduced. We treat them the same. So whether you're on free or reduced, the fee is waived.
Did you say the activity pass you're looking at would be for all students then, not just high school students?
6 through 12.
6 through 12, okay.
It would require the student ID, so all they're gonna get on their student ID is a sticker, a hologram sticker on the back that's very difficult to copy. So if they bought the pass, they'd get the sticker for the back of their ID, and then it would ensure that every student that comes to our events, 6 through 12, has an ID. And if they're not in 6th grade, they're required to enter with a parent. So it gives administration a little bit of a,
Yeah.
hey, can I see your ID when there's an issue?
Yeah.
Which would be helpful as well.
Does anybody have any other questions?
But so the pass isn't really meant to solve necessarily the revenue issue. It's more to give you a consistent. Okay, and tell me again how many events? Is it like 5 basically? Or what's the break-even?
So it's $5 an event. So we do 4 regular season home football games. That's $20. And then we have been charging for boys hockey, and there's 13 home events for boys hockey. So if you go to half, that's kind of where we're getting that $40 for the pass. all the other events would be free, and this would not include fine arts. We would still do the same thing we've always done for band concerts, choir concerts, and our theater productions.
Any other questions, or anybody have any comments?
About the $40 pass, I think it's a good idea. I think I love the ad of having kids bring the IDs. I think that's a great thing. And you calculated the 40 because it's about half of the events. And I don't suppose there's any way to get a unique, and I'm answering the question already for myself, simply because we have the total number of attendees that are students in the list here, but there's no way to get actually a unique representation. So
I think if we asked our ticket takers to do it differently, we've been clicking every time a student comes in.
Okay.
And then obviously the visiting students are paying $5, the home students haven't been paying $5. So if that's what you mean by unique,
Well,
or by sport.
Well, when you have like 6,000 go to football, how many of those go to every football game? 'Cause
Sure,
you know,
yeah.
It's the unique visitor aspect that would help with understanding the revenue generated from the $40. But I do like the way it goes all the way down to sixth grade, because that helps a lot. I think the middle schoolers would love to go to the high school events.
And families just felt like it was, I have an 8th grade daughter and a 10th grade son, and one's paying and one's not. Why is this happening? So that was the concern that I was getting from parents, and so this, I think, would be more consistent. And we don't see as many elementary age kids come to games as we do middle school and high school.
I guess that answers my question
Yeah,
about the
I think so.
family pass, because I still like the idea of a family pass, because there are parents that would like to maybe take their kids to games, because their kids now play through PLAY or whatever, so then they get to go and watch, you know, maybe what's coming or what they think could be coming for them to play. And it can get real costly to do that, especially if you have, you know, a few kids coming. So I still would like to find out more about family
And I would
pass
love to
or-
look into it as well.
I know that's not the topic tonight, but that kind of all comes together here. And I am glad too that it goes down to sixth grade for the pass, because that helps with families too, that maybe have more interest.
And I was just gonna say one thing too, is, you know, I know like we have Prior Lake Soccer Club night and so our kids, like we usually host a night and the kids all get it free, even the little guys.
Mhm.
So it's like, it's encouraged, so I'm assuming PLAY does something.
PLAY does
They do.
Yeah.
So
So they
one,
get in for one night, you know.
Basketball for sure.
Yeah, they get in free, don't they, that night?
they do. So
Yeah.
each sport gets one youth night where athletes get in with a paid parent, basically.
Yeah.
But if we do ball retrievers, or we do
Oh, yeah. They-
ball boys at a basketball game, or anything that we set up, those youth teams always get in free. If our first graders are skating between periods, that whole group gets in with coaches and everything, so. But the family pass would be super popular, and I think a win financially for the district as well. In my experience, when I was in Lakeville, the family pass was very popular. And it's used quite a bit in the fall, but you see use kind of fall off in the winter and spring, and so I think you're making your money on the family passes. And it's convenience for the family, and the lines are shorter to buy tickets at events, so all those are wins.
Okay.
Russ, how much are those, do you know, how much are family passes?
I remember them being somewhere between $90 and $100 for the family pass. And it was 2 adults and up to 3 kids, I think was kind of how they limited it.
Wow.
So do they just get like a pass or something that has their name on it or something?
Yeah, so we did that was a physical pass with the same sticker, hologram sticker on the back. And the family would order it on FeePay, and then we would just file one for each one of the family members. They'd fill that out on FeePay, and then they'd all come in and pick them up.
So what if grandma and grandpa are visiting or something like that for a game? Do they get in on their family pass, or they pay separately?
They pay separately. Yep.
But if they live in the community.
But they live in the community, and
They
then
get it
they
free.
You get it free.
If you're over, what is it, 50?
55.
Yeah, somehow senior
So-
citizen at 55 just isn't
I
right. Jeez.
So the process, in the process for that, Martha, if I'm right, they have to come into the district office to pick that up.
Yeah.
And we make sure they live in the
what's that?
district.
Okay.
And so I think our biggest complaint there is we're not able to provide those passes at the pass gate or at the ticket
They have to
gate.
go pick them up.
They have to go pick them up because it'd be difficult for our ticket takers to,
Well, what event you gonna be at? I mean,
But it's one
you can have,
pass,
like-
it's one pass.
It's one pass.
It's one pass, it's just a card, you get a card.
Each person does.
Yes, each person, so
Each
it's not like I wanna
person.
come to an event, I get a card, then the next day I have to
Yes.
come get another card.
Yeah, right.
One card.
But often they wanna, they
Pick
say,
it up.
well, I heard I could get in free, I'm at an event, so that, I think it's something that we could work on, maybe even provide them out of our office and the district office, but it's something they need to pre-pick up. And this would be too. And so there's gonna be some growing pains, and I think if we go with the pass tonight, what you may hear when school starts is, well, they used to get in free. And so, you know, the answer to that would be, yes, they used to get in free to everything except football and boys hockey, and this pass is just providing us a more consistent way of monitoring who's coming to games, ensuring they have their student ID on them. Really, what they're paying is about the same as what they would have paid if they went to football and home hockey,
And shortening their lines.
and shortening our lines.
And we'll communicate it in advance,
We would.
hopefully, to.
So it'll shorten your lines because all they have to do is show their
Yep.
pass. when they have their
Pass. There's a
line.
pass
You won't-
gate.
Oh,
They go right to the pass gate
Nice.
instead of the
Okay.
ticket line. And this would be part of back to school, open houses, all the information that goes home for parents, the letter, the whole thing would have that change.
So how do y'all feel about the increase?
I'm more for it. I would-
Not the pass now. we're moving
Oh,
on.
the increase, oh, sorry, the increase.
Yeah, I've got a few more questions on that one too.
Oh, no, well, my thing was, I think that the kids that are playing should be paying, or, you know, not across, you know, should be actually good, so I'm actually okay with it, that it's, you know, it's been 3-4 years.
My concern is general fund, so if we don't put it off, it's coming out of general fund.
Did you have answer to them
Yep.
also, okay?
Do you wanna see the
The grid?
Yeah, the grid.
averages?
Yeah, good. So. Here you go. So, you know, my question is, as I stated before, this is, overall, the activities fees, particularly people that are more than one kid, they're fairly high.
Mhm.
And, you know, so I went around and did kind of my own research and looked at Bloomington, also looked at Richfield, looked at Jordan, a few of the schools around there. And, you know, Lakeville and Prior Lake, proposed, or even what it is right now, are higher than a lot of other schools. Why is that?
Yeah, I would agree. So, first, Lakeville had some deeper cuts than we've ever experienced in this district. And their response to keeping those sports around, including the middle school sports, was to raise fees. And a lot of their programs were running at a net zero cost to the district. And especially the $420 for hockey in Lakeville, or is it $440?
We're 460.
Because of they're basically trying to offset the cost of ice time. So here's what the other districts did. 196 cut all return busing to keep fees down. So they don't really have any return buses. And in fact, if you're Eastview and you're playing Apple Valley, there's no bus to. Boosters will pay for football, and a couple other sports might fund the bus, but they slash transportation costs. Lakeville doesn't provide a return bus. Farmington and Shakopee are still providing fairly similar programming and services that we provide. Shakopee has made a commitment to keep their fees down because they feel their demographic is different than ours. And I know Farmington, the last conversation I had with Farmington is that they're looking for a fee increase. The one thing they haven't done, or that they've stayed 210 across the board for all sports. And it was still Mary Haugen, if you remember, Lee, probably, were you here 2008 or 2009, somewhere in there, where she really started to look at cost of programming versus fee collected. And that's how we got, you know, different fees across the board depending on what the total cost was, how many kids were out. And so that's sort of where we landed. Now, we've been pretty good about saying every 3 to 4 years, based on inflation, we're gonna come back and ask for fee increases. I think what Farmington faces now and what they're concerned about is they may ask for a $50 increase, which is gonna be a significant increase, but we've tried to keep up. So it doesn't hurt as badly when we do ask for a fee increase.
Do these fees, are is any of this money going into any type of coaches' salaries or anything like that?
No, this all goes into the general account. Our coaches' salaries for the first time since I've been here, Julie, went up 2% in the last contract cycle. So they got a raise for the first time in a long time in both 17-18 and 18-19. So that was part of the increase on the slide before, you know, why we're looking at increasing fees. That coach's pay schedule has been pulled out of the teaching contract. And so I'll be negotiating with Jim separately for coaches, and I don't know what that will look like. Matt kind of thought we might see an increase every 2 years, but maybe not, depending on what's happening around us. And, you know, I just haven't talked to Jim about what that might look like moving forward. I have that comparison too, and we're in a pretty good spot for varsity. Our lower levels are paid a little bit less than the schools in the conference, but we're pretty competitive there.
How do we handle, I mean, you know, all things considered, when you look at the demographics, we have a wide variety, but we do have a lot of people and a lot more families that I know of that never ever apply for free and reduced. They maybe should, but they do feel stigmatized. And we've got a lot of people who struggle. I know parents have come up and said they're already struggling to pay it, particularly when they've got kids and kids who want to be in multiple sports or something like that. Do we have any relief for them? Is there anything that is done for those families? Because, you know, and I think, you know, Jonathan was here before, and his kids were in dance for a while and still are. And, you know, like he said, and I've experienced it too, you sign up, but you still keep doling out the cash.
Oh, yeah.
It does not end with that fee. You know, just go to Dick's Sporting Goods or anything like that during the season, and it's not cheap. So how can we, or how do we compensate for these high fees?
Well, it's a real concern. Families don't always, either they don't know to fill out the paperwork, or they just don't want to fill out the paperwork for whatever reason. I do rely on our coaches and our guidance counselors and the people that know the hardships to let me know. And I'll contact Martha, and we have a hardship fund through Dr. Stall's office. And so we can pay the complete entire fee. We can put them on a payment plan where they don't have to pay it all up front, or we just collect monthly. We've purchased shoes out of the hardship account. We've done, you know, whatever we think the athlete may need, we try to provide for them. And you're right, because like for football, they'll pay this fee, and then there's a practice jersey, and there's a mouth guard, and there's some other things that they don't anticipate, but we buy extras of those, so if they need to, we don't collect the mouth guard back, but we collect the practice jersey back.
That's good.
And so we do find ways to try to address those things if we're in the know. We just sometimes are not in the know. But there is a hardship account, and the fan board, we gotta contact them one more time, Julie, but we have that advertising board that sits down on the track. Have you seen
Yeah.
that? It generates about $6,000 a year. That goes into that hardship account. So that's where the money is coming from that we can use to waive a fee or to buy a pair of shoes or do something like that.
And I have to say that, you know, our fees at the high school are probably way less than fees for any traveling group, any traveling baseball, hockey, all of those.
So the extramural stuff that's
Right.
not part associated
Yeah.
with the school, yeah, but that's totally different.
And I understand that, but we do try to keep our fees down as much as we can without it affecting the general fund. So
Well,
there's a kind of this middle ground that we're
Yeah.
trying to.
And not that justifies anything, but parents are paying more all the way through and buying all the equipment that they weren't buying before. So in some ways, playing high school sport is a value compared to what they've been paying.
It is, I appreciate that, it really is, when you look, I mean, when you look at basketball being $240 for 5 months, 6 months of coaching and games, and, you know, that's, by the hour, it's a pretty good deal, comparatively, you know, I mean, to your point, Mary, the last thing we wanna do is, you know, is limit opportunities for kids.
There's, you know, one of the things that, that there's, I know a family that has 3 kids in hockey and they're dying between skate costs, you know, the thing, and it's turning into a year, every sport's turning into a year-round sport, which doesn't help either, particularly if they wanna make the team, et cetera. One of the ideas that, one of these families came up with is as long as they pay the full amount, could there be a payment plan?
Mhm, for sure. And it's, I've probably set up a handful in the 4 years I've been here, so not many requested. But one of the things that our office, so the payment plan is one thing that we can do a better job of advertising, like.
That would be good too.
If there's a hardship, please let us know, we can set up a payment plan. That would get the conversation started, I think. The other piece to this is really starting to advertise that Family Max, because the fees went up $15 a sport. The Family Max, I think, went up $50. And across 3 kids, you're gonna hit that Family Max pretty quickly.
And I don't think people knew about that.
Well, we don't, again, I've reached the Family Max a handful, like, we don't have families hit it all that often. But if you have 3 kids come through, and there's a few families right now that have 3 in 9th through 12th grade that are gonna far exceed it.
Yeah.
Or 2 with multiple sports.
And that's the other thing
Yeah.
too, right? So, yeah.
And we look at what they're spending on intramurals, what they're spending on fine arts and activities, and what they're spending on athletics to try to reach that family cap.
So it's all inclusive?
So if they're putting money into fee pay for those 3
Okay.
things, then then it's counting towards their Family Max.
Okay. That's a good thing. Yeah, it would be nice if they could advertise it, a little bit more.
What
Let
would
people
it,
know.
Jeff, if you scroll down one line, I think is it up to 900?
I mean,
It's
900,
900.
that would be the proposal.
And
It
what
was
at?
850.
Yeah,
850.
But I looked at, if you just pay for 3 more sports, that's $45 more, so, you know, if you're paying for 3 sports in a.
Yeah, the $50 increase.
Right.
It's a little different than the 3,000.
Yeah.
That's a little different.
That's the Lakeville, yeah.
Yes.
Well, there's no cap at.
Well, you know, like I said, I looked at Bloomington, I looked at Richfield and Jordan and a few others, and us in Lakeville, you know, without the increase, we're still on the high side, and so, you know, we don't want people looking at that in a negative light either, but to advertise a payment plan would help, to advertise the cap, to remind them, so they don't immediately tell their kids, sorry, we can't afford you this year in this sport, or something like that, so you don't preempt that would be good.
Yep.
Back
we
in the
will,
day, it used to be on the registration form. I don't know how the kids register now, but that, it used to be on the family cap was on there, because we were able to use it quite a few times.
And it's in fee pay, they register in fee pay. I don't know if we provide an information sheet on, you know, and that's something that can be in one of the first paragraphs they read about the registration is, family cap is $900, this is how you reach the family cap. We can put that information right in there.
And we do provide busing
To and from.
to and from, and it's mandatory from what I understand, for the students playing the sport get on the bus, they do not go home with a friend or a parent unless they get special permission from the coach.
Yep.
Okay.
There's a clearance form that they have to fill out.
There were a couple of years that we didn't have. We didn't have them coming home, we took it away for
Yeah,
a few
Oh.
years.
9th grade.
Ninth grade.
For sure.
Yeah, well, we took it away, for my kids were in it, when we were trying to cost.
Well, and that was, a lot of it had to do
Yes, it was
when
for
we
all
were,
sports.
when we were in the cutting. involved.
Yeah.
That was one of the cuts that we did make. for
And it was a
them.
big push, I know, from the coaches at the time and everything, that everybody wanted to bring that back.
Well, it was like, Red Wing did that a number of years ago when they were in a major cut. They raised their athletic fees really high and across the board, and then had no busing besides. You know, it kind of depends on where the school district is at
Yeah.
financially too.
But I think it's really important for team, you know, get up, whether you win or lose, you're still on the bus going home together.
Right.
Everybody's safe.
It's a safety issue, right?
Yeah.
But, so I'm glad we provided. that.
There's a lawsuit pending now, and it's with, I believe, Breck or the Blake School, one of the two that had a cross-country runner postseason drive just to Brookings, and there was a car accident. It was 10 years ago. And it's worked its way up to the Minnesota Supreme Court. And I think schools are gonna start bringing back return buses.
Yeah.
I think they're gonna be in a tough spot, you know, when that one ends.
We even have a return bus for Knowledge Pool, don't we?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
For every- that's it, yeah.
We do now.
For every-
So, yeah, that was
Even
back
marching
too,
band.
so,
Yeah, everybody gets one.
I think it's a good thing for
Yeah.
team spirit as well as for safety. Okay.
Any other comments? It's on our agenda later this evening, so.
Okay. Thanks, Russ.
Thank you.
Russ. We'll move on to long-term facility maintenance.
Good evening. Was presented to the FLIRT committee last week. The 10-year plan, it's an annual review and approval required to the school board. I can highlight most of the changes that we have on the plan from last year are pavements that we moved up or moved back based on construction. One other item of note is penthouse envelope repair at Hidden Oaks. We're starting to take water on a couple of the penthouses there, so we want to get those repaired.
That was going on before too, though, wasn't it?
We've had it at Twin Oaks, and yeah, it's, the construction of Hidden Oaks is EFS, and doesn't last forever.
Yeah.
So where was that at?
Hidden Oaks.
Oh, no, the one that you said.
Twin Oaks, we've done Twin Oaks, now we're moving to Hidden Oaks.
So you said somewhere is taking on water.
Hidden Oaks.
Hidden Oaks,
Yep.
okay.
And of course, we, a fair amount of work tied with construction. If the work is allowable for LPFM, we want to leverage that. We get 25% state aid on all those projects that way, and it's kind of where we're at. Again, the majority of the projects that we moved up for that are pavement projects tied to construction.
I saw that there's a lot going on in 19 and 20, mostly due to the construction and
Correct.
all that. I did have a couple of questions, though. The things like the parking lot repairs, hardwood floors, stuff like that, do they have a normal schedule? Do they have to be done like on average every 5 years, every 10 years, or something like that?
Sure.
So, we just finished our 10-year pavement plan, so we have all of the pavement services and concrete and tracks and turf actually also in a 10-year plan for maintenance. So not everything will be touched, but we are addressing it in a 10-year cycle like we do with them, LTFM, and like we do with our roofs.
Okay, so, when we're going out to fiscal year 2029 here, isn't there some more, for lack of a better term, X's that should be in that field just to plan out? Especially when it comes to carpet replacement, I don't care about door hardware, because that's, I'm sure, based upon where, but like walking paths, all of that, where you're gonna have to do it, because you would think there'd be more X's out there at this point in time.
And there will be. What we're doing though is we're really trying to augment construction right now.
Oh, I get it,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking
So, the
long-term,
further
just to
out we
make sure
get,
we have it on there.
The less we have,
Yeah.
but next year we'll have an updated plan again,
Okay.
and we'll start addressing that as we get through construction.
Because I noticed, the last 2 or 3 years, it's been very heavy in the first couple years, and then you see little, and then it kind of goes in this wave.
Right.
Just from a long-term planning, I personally would like to see how these things, get scheduled out and see what then, so I didn't have to print it out from the last couple years and then compare it, that sort of
Right.
thing.
Makes sense. Any other comments or questions? This will also be on our meeting agenda.
And FLIRT did look at this,
Yep.
right,
Right.
at the meeting last week?
Yep.
Mhm.
We can do that then. Then we'll move on to the operational and priority work.
Excellent, thank you. This really, as you receive kind of a review of everything, especially in the spring, you really heard a lot of the recommendations already of what our work's gonna be. And we had a lot of conversations about some of that, the core work for improvement that we have depicted here as green doesn't come off yet, and there's just a little hesitancy yet. I think people feel that, it's core work when our systems are solid and it's just the way we do things, and I think some folks said, you know what, let's just make sure we're really solid with that. So really, as we look at that developmental work, the work that's outlined as purple, and again, our goal always in looking at what's the work under each of our strategic directions is, our improvement theory is that as we do this work, as we implement these systems really deeply and with fidelity, we lessen the variability in what happens in our classrooms, which helps to increase achievement for all students and decrease achievement gaps. So you can really see with the purple work, there's nothing new. There's absolutely nothing new on this, and I think that's a really important message that we share with our staff. I think the other really important thing here is, if you remember Kevin, when Kevin shared about strategic direction, the 1A around personalized learning, he had that umbrella. And really, if you look at strategic direction 1, we're gonna continue, Jeff and his team have just been doing a fantastic job of continuing to bring things together and make connections. Really, those 3 umbrella areas are looking at personalized learning, making sure that we get the systems for MTSS in place, which is really those supports on all levels of our learning continuum, and then continuing to work on our district equity and excellence plan. So really, those are the 3 big highlights out of that first strategic direction. As we look at strategic direction number 2, you know, we kept the construction work purple because it's another year of all of the planning, of all of the meetings and budgeting and making sure that we're not, you know, taking our eye off that prize. We feel really good about where everything is right now, and that's because there's been a lot of time and work put into that. As we look at strategic direction number 3, we've made the decision, really that's our innovation, and clearly there's work other than what's outlined here, especially like with innovation and some of those things. We are not going to do another round of the idea doc. We want to be sure that we listen and do some work and development in those areas, so that'll be the focus on that, which is why it stayed green. You know, in 4A, we are just continuing to want to be sure with our eSTEM work that there's consistency around those pillars that we've used with the Green Ribbon Awards. So, you know, part of me is like, I don't know if some of this stuff will ever go off because we're continuing to build consistency. You know, my goal is always, if we say and celebrate the fact that we're an eSTEM district, I would like you to be able to grab any 5 staff in any corner of the district, and when you say, so what's that mean to be an eSTEM district, you get a similar response. And I think that's when we'll know that it can come off this, and we can keep working on that. The new work, because it's a new strategic, it's not new work, but it is a new strategic direction, is number 5. And we talked about that a lot during the strategic planning process when we looked at a safe learning environment, both in terms of the physical safety of our campuses, as well as really the social emotional learning of our students. So while we have been doing significant work in both of those areas, I really respect the community stakeholders' desire to call that out as a strategic direction. And I think it gives us pause this year especially to really do an audit and say, okay, in terms of the social emotional, we've got a lot going on. Let's really streamline, let's really make sure we're clear that we don't have gaps, that we're all on the same page, that we're implementing things consistently, and that we're really looking at what are those results and outcomes that we're seeking. And then in terms of number 6, you know, the last couple of years we've had specific things called out under that. That's where our stakeholder survey work was aligned. That's where the strategic refresh plan was aligned. And on this one, we just said, you know, we're gonna keep looking at our data and find those areas. One of the stats that we keep coming back to is student surveys. The question is, I feel connected to at least one adult in our building, and at the elementary level, we have don't quote me on this, but it's a very high, 90, let's say 6% that students approved, but at the secondary, it's an 83. And to me, some of those perception data points really, then we lean into that social emotional and how are we connecting and building really deep relationships with kids as we help personalize learning, as we ensure that we're doing both the academic and social emotional connections with kids. Really excited this year. You know, one of the things that we worked really hard on this spring, and it doesn't show up on this piece of paper, but pushing ourselves a little bit more with what are the measures, what are the metrics, what are the measures around that. So, you know, our working document has a lot of those, and as Jeff and I have worked, and Jeff will work with his team this summer, really, you know, we know that scorecard is way too big, it's got way too many measures, so we're not using it in the way that we want to. So really bringing that into a place where we're paying really, really deep attention to those measures that are most important, and then aligning our department and our school improvement plans to that as well. So continued work to do. Like I said, I feel great that we are making progress. You know, none of these are one-year things, and that's what, you know, sometimes I know for some people it could be frustrating. It's like, aren't you done with that yet? And I'm really proud that we're not just saying, okay, we're doing it. Let's be really clear, let's make sure that we're seeing improvements mostly with the outcomes that we've designed.
Terry, we talk a lot about student, you know, their experience and their surveys and stuff like that. We see the numbers up there. I know that they're grouped by, you know, both high and low on two extremes, and we kind of talked about that at the data tree, but what about staff feedback? Is there any way we can kind of understand how the staff are also, especially the teaching staff, are adapting to this and get their feedback and understand what they've been doing on their surveys? Because I notice we talk about a lot of different surveys, parents and students, but we don't really talk about staff. And they're the ones who are implementing this.
Absolutely.
And their feedback would be
Yeah.
beneficial, I think, for us to see
Mhm.
as comments and their ratings and stuff like that. Is
Yeah.
that possible?
Um,
And I know that's a moving target and stuff like that,
Yeah.
but just to get an idea, because, you know, here's the thing, is obviously there's a change hump, and nobody really adapts to change well at first until it becomes more commonplace.
Right.
So I'm just kind of curious about where we are in that continuum.
Well, and we don't ask, you know, like, I don't know that for each of these, we have questions to staff. You know, what we hear from staff similarly to every school district I've been in is too many initiatives, right? So I'm really excited that we can say, there's nothing new here. This is just, we want to support you doing the work. I think, you know, there's a couple things that we have heard from staff. I mean, one of the first things that I heard from staff when I came in is the work around equity. And, you know, we're now doing it. The social emotional, I mean, I got an email this week from a teacher about actually with the theme for next year, looking at social emotional learning and some things. So, you know, I feel good that a lot of that work has come from staff, and we know as our principals are implementing their building instructional leadership teams and really trying to figure out how do we get all staff involved in that work directly aligns to this work. And I think that's really on us as leaders to make sure we're constantly connecting the dots on this priority work and engaging our staff in it. Because you're right, they're the ones implementing this on a daily basis.
Well, I was just curious, the personalized learning seems to hit them most directly, because it's really falls on them to create that environment when they have, you know, large or small classes, really, to create that environment and to be able to reach out and help the students adapt to each one of their ways. And that's why I was kind of curious about their feedback on how that's working, and if there's anything that we can gauge from that.
So if you remember Kevin's
Yeah, thanks.
presentation on personalized learning, there was a continuum, teacher-directed, student-centered, student-directed.
Mhm.
And the idea was classrooms and teachers across the continuum multiple times a day. So it wasn't like this is bad, this is good.
Right.
But recognizing and working with teachers where there are opportunities, where there needs to be teacher-directed, you know, student-centered and then student-directed. And I think we just pretty much started that work. I mean, we have a lot of examples where we have kids doing directed work, like MinCaps. We have some that are doing teacher or student-centered work where they have choice within the classroom, and we still have teacher-directed as well. And I think the idea is more the intentionality behind it. And so starting to talk through all of those with our staff and providing PD. And so we just had that group come together. We've been working on that over several years to define what is that continuum we're looking at. We've not done a survey as far as where are you on this continuum, but that is something that we started looking at, is really as we identify professional learning. You know, staff that say, I need more support in this, more of that personalized. We have started doing that with some of our work with equity, some of our work on assessment. And we'll carry that over into the personalized learning next year as well.
I think that your point, I appreciate, Mary, about the change process. I mean, it's managing change, and it's managing, you know, if this is the way I've taught for a lot of years, and I'm doing everything that I believe is right for kids. And you're right, this has been a paradigm. So I especially feel with the personalized learning piece, go slow to go fast. Make sure people understand the why. Really, just like we believe in meeting kids where they are, we're working really hard to meet staff where they are. Now, there's a place then, that there's some people that might need to be pushed a little bit more, but.
And that's normal. I
Yes.
mean, and it's just because they're the
Yes.
front end to the students where we're really trying to help. So, and their feedback and stuff like that is pretty important, especially as they go through this change themselves. To get a student to directed learning is not easy. It requires a lot of hands-on, I'm sure. So I'm just, you know, trying to make sure that we cover, we've talked about parent surveys, we've talked about board surveys, we've talked about student surveys. What seems to be missing in there is the staff, and that's why I'm bringing it up.
Yeah, we're happy, you know, I mean, I know in our report out to you, you've got that information, but as an admin team, we're certainly looking at that really deeply, you know, and I think, you know, to Jeff's point, I don't know that we have questions on each of these, and I know we do with eSTEM, I know we do with some of it, so, you know, be intentional on that to make sure we're getting the feedback we need, and involving teachers on the leadership of this, so that their voice is present.
Okay.
Thanks.
Does anyone else have any comments on that?
Thanks.
Thank you. We'll move on to policies. Naming of school buildings and facilities, I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
really,
Is that you?
yeah, just a really minor change. The only thing that so the current policy reads, when naming a school building, major portions of school buildings or school grounds, the school board shall direct the superintendent to establish a committee subject to board approval, comprised of the superintendent designee, da-da-da-da-da. We struck out the subject to board approval, just because that wasn't the practice that we've been doing, is that you would approve the committee.
You brought the committee forward, though.
We did.
And you know, this has been brought up quite a bit. We tend to have the same people on the committees. I would like to see, a more diverse group on the committees. And I think that helps with community engagement a lot more. But we tend to see the same people showing up at the meetings and on the committees and stuff like that, and I'd like to see us do a little bit more outreach on that. Because once a committee's chosen, we can't go back and say, could you go out there and just put something in everyone's lunchbox and say, please, you know, or something like that. And I know that's a struggle that a lot of school districts have, but I have noticed for quite some time that the same names from the community as well as from staff are showing up all the time, and I'm wondering if that's giving us enough freshness, varied feedback, all that kind of stuff.
I would
Is that-
agree. I see the same names.
Yeah,
I
happy,
agree. I
open
agree
for
too.
suggestions,
Yeah.
because we invited everybody and.
I agree
Last
too, but-
time, there were so many people that wanted to be on the boundaries committee, and it was chosen by the principals from the people that applied to from those schools in those areas.
It was randomly selected by the principals. That was the process that we used, is that they submitted the names and the principals were to draw from those names.
So
And I
it'd
don't
be nice
know
to
how
have some
many.
fresh.
I don't know how you get more random than that.
Well,
And it's just about how many people, and I don't know this. I
Yeah, I
don't know
mean,
how many
you-
people submitted names.
I absolutely agree with you, we need, you know, it'd be great to get new people, but, you know, the reality is, only certain people are gonna show up to do a lot of things a lot of times. And I love it if more people would come with different perspectives, it'd be great. But, you know, when you put something out there, more often than not, it's the same ones that always show up.
It's like
that-
people that run stuff, you know, the same people go to the senior party. It's the same 10%
Yeah.
of volunteers, you know, that
And it's
continually.
that way in everything.
And we'll keep working
But,
on it.
I
We'll
mean, diversity's
absolutely keep
good.
working on
But
it.
there's some categories, even though it's random, then there's some that it's always, the last 3 or 4 committees have always included certain people in administration, or certain teacher representatives. So, be nice to shake it up.
Go ahead.
I guess the only thing is, I know we weren't approving them. We did at one time approve the committees. And we're looking at who's on the committee. But kind of to this discussion point, you know, is it possible to open it up rather than anybody that wants to, kind of thing? Because they'll whittle themselves down when you put out the dates, you know, that it needs to be at, you know. Anyone interested, if you get 50 people that want to do it, that's a little cumbersome, but then when the dates come out and if they can only come to certain ones, it does drop a lot of people.
I think it depends, you know, I think yes.
I mean, some of the
And-
major things, if it's a smaller thing, I get it, you're not gonna do that.
And for the boundaries especially, it was really important that we had representatives from across the district. You know, maybe not every issue would be that important,
Mhm.
so we wouldn't have, you know, but we were pretty intentional with that on this last one.
I still like that they come to the board so we know who's on the committee though.
Well, I'd say that's what our practice is. It's always
It's not,
been
but it, yeah, well, we used to approve it.
Yeah, I know.
Now we just look at it and now it's subject to board approval, so there's nothing in it that even says the board knows who's on the committee.
But they always bring it forward, it's not like they don't. I think on every single thing, they've got
I
a
agree
committee
with you.
roster.
It's not in.
Yeah, I agree.
We
with
can-
you.
It's not said- I would like
What
it
would you
stated
like
in here
to,
that.
would you like it as is, or what would you like added?
It doesn't have to be board approval,
Board
but just
review?
board.
Board review?
Board review.
Review?
Mhm.
Yep, that'd be
All right,
fine.
that's good.
Okay.
And there's just a grammatical correction on the last word of page 2.
Yeah.
The basis.
It should be basis.
Yeah.
IS.
Yeah, right.
And
Yeah, I
not-
saw that this morning too.
Yeah.
and,
Thank you.
D was on there, but.
Thank you.
the E was
Unlimited
struck.
based.
Okay.
And then I think the other was just changing Kristen's title.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I will make that change to add, subject to board review. And then we'll bring, if that's all right, that this one has to come back here, I'd just bring it forward in July at the board meeting, if that's all right? Okay, thank you.
And then investments.
This is really just, it's on page 21 in the G, the third page, if you're only just looking at the,
Yeah.
Just the number.
it's just a number change for the FDIC, we missed it, that's all it is.
Okay. Any comment on all that? And then we'll move into mandatory and annual policies.
And we just annually, like I said, bring these forward, and you know, some of the policies, even though we're gonna seek approval to all of them on this annual basis, some of them have been, reviewed very, very recently, and I think almost all now have been reviewed in the last, 3 years. So, again, this is just that time of year. Now, what will come forward, even though we'll be seeking approval on these at the next board meeting, because there might have been some legislative changes that might have impacted things, MSBA may come forward with some revisions, we'll bring those forward to you, so you may approve something next month, and then we bring something forward with some changes, you know, shortly thereafter, but it just allows us to know that annually you've looked at these, reviewed these, and approved these.
So, I'm sorry, are we gonna, in the next board meeting, are we gonna be voting on all of these then? Or is
Yeah,
this
they're
just-
usually approved in one
Yeah.
motion.
They're the annual.
And,
And it's open to discussion during
Well,
that time.
and there's no changes to any of these, they're exactly, so we're not going through the
Correct.
individual, okay,
Correct.
okay.
Any other questions about it?
I have a silly question. So in a lot of these, it says the information shall be placed in a conspicuous place in the building. Where is that usually?
Like for the,
Like
The
policies about
teachers-
harassment
in the
or about
teachers'
what-
lounges.
Oh, thank you.
Usually
I was
that's
just
where-
curious what conspicuous
Yep,
is.
usually there's a bulletin board in most of the teachers'
Okay.
lounges, so for some of those employee rights
Okay.
kinds of things,
The
yeah.
EOC stuff too is next to it.
Yeah, yeah.
Drug-free workplace.
And then when
right
it
next to
says-
wash your hands before you go back to the workplace.
Ah. And then when it
Oh,
says
was
it's
it?
reviewed with staff, is that just part of a fall, like, is that verbally reviewed with them at a fall in-service or something, or on some of those? Yeah, okay, thank you.
Melissa?
I have a question on policy 413, that is the harassment and violence employee.
Can you tell me what number? Are you just 413?
413.
Policy 413, on page 2, as I'm looking on it. It talks about age, actually it's page 1, under definitions, age. It says age means a person is over age of 25. We could have an employee that's under 25. I'm curious why it says age is 25 or older.
Is that in policy then?
It's
Yeah.
protected class. It's the definition of protected class.
So. what if
Is
we have
that a
an
legal
employee that
definition?
would-
It must be not our definition.
Because
wonder
if
if
they're an
that's a legal
adult, they're
definition.
21 or older. I'm not clear on that, why it would say that. Because we could have an employee who is not 25.
We could have employees who are 18. We
Right.
have a lot of them.
Right, so then they would be covered under this.
No, that's not correct. So if you look at the purpose, it encompasses all employees. But I think under this, they're talking about protected classifications. I don't know exactly why it says 25. I think Jim would be able to speak to that.
Yeah.
But if you're an employee, you would be covered under this policy and, you know, be afforded all of the due process associated with any types of harassment or discrimination in the workplace. So that's not an exclusionary factor.
So
for
I guess I would need
employees.
clarification as to why it calls out age 25 is.
It seems like we're renting a car,
So-
not necessarily.
It does.
We'll,
Right,
I was
yeah.
trying to think, the only thing that's 25 is a limit, is a regular car.
Yeah.
we'll
so
get that and bring it back
just
in
to have
July.
clarification
Yep.
during, on
40
that
is-
point.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other comments before this goes?
That's the protected class for age discrimination.
That's what I'm thinking.
That's all that is. It's
It's
usually
just the one
40,
that's defined.
but you can pick a lower number, so that's what that is.
Is it 25 or higher, I hope?
Yeah, it says
I'm hoping till-
It says over 25. Yeah, it did say over 25.
But that's what that refers to, is age discrimination.
Okay, superintendent relations, anything to comment on? I'm not sure what that means. Informational items, I don't have any. Is there anyone who would like to speak to the board? Then we'll adjourn for the open meeting. I'll give you a couple minutes, we can't start till 7, so.
Question, topics for future meetings? When, do we have an opportunity for that?
I'm sorry, what are you asking? To bring
it-
forward topics?
Yes. Is that now?
Well,
Or
we
I'm not
can, I
sure what
guess.
time.
I guess I don't have it on here anywhere that we were talking about it. I'm not sure we covered it, Melissa.
At the end of each study session, we have the opportunity to suggest opportunities for discussion at future meetings. And so at this time, I'd like to make a recommendation.
Would that be
to
under
do that.
informational items? We don't have it on the agenda, so that's why I'm kind of throwing.
It's usually at the end of our meeting.
We've talked about it in the past, if the majority of the board supports something.
Okay, go for it.
So I would like to have us discuss the topic at an upcoming meeting, study session about the Old Del Lago program and taking a look at that. We have not had an audit of it, and there has been concern that we've heard on a few occasions now, and I think that we should be able to learn more about that and possibility of what an audit would look like. We've had a decline in enrollment, and we care very much about the program. We want it to thrive, and I want to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to.
I'm not sure the program's been declined, but.
In population, or in families.
We've had some families leave the program, but I don't think it's declining, so I just want to make that clear.
Ju-
And we've
Population.
only lost 4 kids in our program, total overall.
We
You
haven't
mean the
audited.
total plus and minus coming in and out?
Mhm.
Okay.
And we have a
Well-
full kindergarten next year,
Plus. It's
but
over
it
80,
no,
right?
that's just resident students.
Yeah.
Only resident students, and it's over capacity right now.
So we've had families leave, and I don't know what that number is regardless of who's coming in. And there have been questions.
So you'd like to have a discussion about the whole program, not
Yes.
just whether we do an audit or not? I just wanted to clear.
It could be doing an audit. There's just been a lot of questions, it seems like, from community members.
We had an update from
from Richie and all that kind of stuff, maybe just another update on it to find out what's changed and anything that's been done. I mean, we're still getting a lot of emails.
We're getting emails, so I know that doesn't mean that we have to talk about something, but
Have you guys gone in, like, that was helpful to me, I went in with my questions and I toured the school and talked to teachers and to Richie, and that helped me kind of get a better grasp of what was going on. I don't know if you've had an opportunity to do that, but that was helpful, and also asked to, their test scores are also coming up now, which is pretty impressive. And I will also share that the top English performer in 4th grade was from Loyola Del Lago this year in English, so I'm digging into it because I've been
that's great.
curious.
That's great, and, you know, I've been watching things, but we're hearing from community that, folks that have children there, and I just think it's worth taking a look at. We haven't talked about that for a while.
Would you want another presentation and then discussion? Or what would you want it to look like?
Well, it sounds like, from what we're hearing on emails from the community, is that they still have questions about.
Yeah, I
things.
understand that, but what would
So
you
you're seeing the
want it to
same
look like?
emails as I am, so that's why I'm raising it.
But
I have a
what
lot
do you
of
want it to
questions.
look
I don't
like,
know.
Melissa? Do you want a presentation from Del Lago again, from, you know, like test score results? So that we can prepare, if we go forward with it, so we know what
I
you
think
want,
that
and
would
then
be
discussion
helpful.
after that.
Yeah.
I just, that's all I'm asking.
Right, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, a plan, I know that it's a new program, so an improvement plan, that they had, you know, that sort of thing, because there was a lot of, if I remember correctly, the presentation was about what they're planning on doing, what they're planning on changing, things like that. Just give a status update.
Yeah.
It would be
Status
good.
update, if there's changes made, or.
I just wanna know what you want it to look like, so that they're prepared to,
Mhm.
if we go forward with it,
So they know.
to make it a productive
Mhm.
discussion.
Right.
So, I mean, if there's something specific you're thinking of,
I don't
or
know.
how you want to present it, I mean, if it's an update, whatever.
I wanna.
Well, I think.
Have you
but
seen
as much
more
as we can give them an
emails?
idea of what the information, or
Yeah,
just
yeah.
questions to be asked.
Right.
I mean, yeah.
'Cause
I've
that-
just seen 2 since the two that came in after the public session. Were there others that came in after
There's
that?
80 families that put their names on that list.
Petition,
On the
anytime
petition,
that
yeah.
kind of stuff, I just wanna get as much information as a board
And I'm
that we
assuming
can.
too, Kristlyn will, with her specialty in immersion, will probably be a great resource. We'll have her for collecting the data now that we have her on staff. I assume that's part of the wisdom in that hire, is that she's got that background.
Well, I think for program review in general, because, you know, we haven't, at least since I've been there, had a program review on Sage.
Right.
Obviously, MinCaps is really new, we haven't,
Right.
you know, so Jeff and I have talked, and we're hoping to kind of get in that, just like we review policies every so many years. What are those programs? You know, we do it with curriculum, and I think part of the MTSS audit and that work, while it isn't, totally aligned to EL programming, special ed programming, it certainly has shed some light on that.
Are there things we could list, like updated MAP scores or NCAs or whichever ones we're looking at, and the resources, like what would help the
Anything
team?
that they use as benchmarks, how are we doing against that, with the changes in the last year? If they were given some things to work on, how those.
Yeah, let's be as specific as we can, so when
Because
they come,
I
we
don't know
know.
specifically, I'm not the board rep for that program, but I think it would be helpful.
I would agree that I'd like to have that discussion, but I'd also agree that I would like to see the other programs reviewed too. because
Right.
And Sage. we
Sage
haven't
hasn't
done-
been reviewed.
We haven't done Sage
forever.
either, so I would like both
And
of them.
MinCaps is pretty new, but I think, you know,
It's
it
on
wouldn't
its third year.
hurt
I
to,
mean, it's
it wouldn't be
been-
hurt to hear about that either. I don't know what other programs there would be, but I guess
EL.
I'd like,
special ed.
I'd like to look at a review of all the programs, or at least get some updates on where they're at.
Mhm.
Just because we're not hearing from people
Yeah,
doesn't
we
mean that
haven't-
we shouldn't know what's
Right.
going on in those
Right.
programs. So,
Right.
I would agree with you, I just wanted kind of some parameters if you were thinking of something as to how you want it, because I'd like it to be
Right.
efficient, because it
Yeah.
could be an involved discussion,
Mhm.
so.
That'd be great.
Is everyone okay with doing something like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
that'd be good.
Thank you.
I'll let you know. Put it in. Anything else?
Time.
I'd like to adjourn to the meeting.
I didn't
Need
know
a
we were
break?
required to stop.
Yeah,
at 7.
I'm not required to stop, but I can't start until 7.
Got it.
so you
Got
need to take a quick break, but we'd like to start by 7:05.